A quick warning, I am going to be talking about some deep stuff in this testimony. So there we go. I am going to be talking about some deep stuff in this testimony. So I just want to warn everybody that with the little kids here, if it gets too much and you feel like you need to take them out, that won't offend me. Um, so I come from a large family. I'm one of 27 grandchildren on my father's side alone. We were brought up Catholic, and we were taught the catechism. We ran through that from from this age to you were 16 and could be confirmed. And what I found was religion wasn't the same across my family. So some of us found religion to be a little more legalistic. Some of it were more lax in their faith. But we all were raised to believe in Jesus Christ. And everything went well until my sophomore year of high school, when two of my cousins, one of which was my best friend, the other one was an older one, was a role model. They died in a head-on car collision. And the first lesson that I have from this all is that religion is easier to shake than faith. So when they died, it really shook my family's beliefs, and it changed the landscape of how religion kind of worked in our family. And for the rest of high school, I was very angry with God and confused. Like, how could He let this happen to me and to my family? You know, we had two young, believing boys just taken from us. And my parents put me into grief therapy right after that had happened. And that's where I learned I was really good at masking. And for those of you who don't know what masking is, it's whenever you can outwardly present happy-go-lucky, normal, but inside you're just dealing with so much turmoil. And for me, I could present as this happy-go-lucky boy going through high school, had no problems showing up to every event just with a smile on, but inside I was just a husk. I ended up developing like these voices you talk to yourself. Like I just find like guys talk to themselves a lot, and I would develop these different personalities that I would like bounce things off of because I didn't trust anybody anymore. I didn't trust anything anymore. And while they served a purpose to start, they quickly turned to being a tormenting point in my life as well, because it wasn't always a sound and apt voice to try and bounce ideas off of. But in high school is where I met my wife. I didn't know it then. My senior year, we started dating, and I found that whenever I was with her, there was silence. I didn't have to worry about these other personalities in my head that I would relay information to and try and navigate the world around me. And that was the first that would happen in a long time. But that was also the starting point of when I started dealing with mental health issues. I had a lot of anxiety, had a lot of depression, and when I turned 19, I moved in with some friends. They were older, and I was working in construction. It was just working and working and working, and there was no relief from what I was experiencing. And that's when I had my first suicide attempt. It was unsuccessful, obviously, but the next morning I was really ashamed and embarrassed of what I had done. And not only was I dealing with the anxiety and depression points, but from that point on, I started experimenting with drugs and alcohol because of the shame of what I felt, plus the internal turmoil that I was experiencing. So shortly after that, our lease ran up. One was moving south, one was moving north, and I decided to move home because I needed companionship. And while living at home, I had a second attempt. And it was unsuccessful again. And this time I was caught, though, because I was really sedated. And my parents found out, and that's when they started getting me into like treatment. And I had my first inpatient stay at a hospital. So after that first inpatient stay, maybe even the second inpatient stay, I moved in with Sam and her family, which is my wife. And there was another attempt uh, that was unsuccessful. Um, and a little after that, I decided um, for a fourth attempt, I wasn't going to be unsuccessful. So this attempt, I involved a gun, and it clicked. But for the older people in the audience, like Marvin the Martian would say, there was no earth-shattering kaboom. And I was confused. I was really taken back. And for the first time in 8 years, I spoke to God and said, okay, I get it, but why not now? And I was met with silence. So I called the suicide hotline, and for those who don't know, it's 988. And I got inpatient stay again, but from this inpatient stay, I was going to start taking the therapies, the coping skills, the strategies that they would give you in these events and in these environments seriously. And one thing that I had learned was that environment doesn't matter. The people around me didn't change what I was going through internally. And I learned that because of what I was going through, my medication wasn't stable. I was taking it when I wanted to. If I felt good, I just stopped taking it. And the groups were barely helping. And between the first attempt and the last attempt, I had been hospitalized 17 times because I had a plan 17 times to end it. But after that time, that last time, me and my wife had our first child, and her name is Skyla. And when she was born, things started to click. Meds got stabilized. I started taking them pretty regimentedly. I started applying what I was learning at the groups. I started applying what I was learning in therapy and just really taking those coping skills to heart. And I had something to live for. And one of the other lessons that I've learned was that life is hard because life is hard. Like, being a Christian doesn't make life easy. Not being a Christian doesn't make life easy. Life is just hard. And one of the verses that stands out to me from the Bible is John 16:33. I told you all this so that you may have peace in me here on earth. You will have many trials and sorrows, but take heart, for I have overcome the world. So, transitioning into the next part of my life, when Skylar was 5, my sister-in-law decided she was going to get baptized. And we went to support her. And at the end of the service, the pastor came out and said, I feel like there's someone in the crowd that wants to get baptized and is being drawn to getting baptized. And I kind of froze because I had that feeling in me. And I didn't know why I had that feeling in me, but I had that feeling in me. And I was like, oh, God, please don't make me get up in front of everybody and do this. And so he said, someone's out there being called to be baptized. And just as I was almost ready to involuntarily stand up, my wife got up and went and got baptized, which is pretty amazing because we really didn't talk about anything religious in our relationship. And my wife doesn't do spontaneous things, but both of those things happened that day. And after that, my wife and my daughter started going to church because my daughter was like, oh, I want to go to church. This is really cool. She'd never been exposed to any of this stuff before. And my wife and daughter went probably about a month or two before I started going. And whenever I started going, it was because I was more curious about what they came home and talked about. And when I would go to church, it was very awkward because, again, I grew up Catholic, and it was, you had your up, down, you had your psalms, and there was the homily. And this was more like what we had today. It was music, and people were dressed not in their Sunday best, and it was comfortable, and it was okay. And I didn't understand it, but it felt good. So a few months into going, we were at the Easter service at Foursquare in Gettysburg, and they were singing Graves in the Gardens. And I was baptized by fire that day because I just wept and wept because this is the relationship with Jesus that I knew about, that I wanted. And trying to trust God is hard. Um, but I was willing to give that a go with someone I was having a relationship with versus just knowing. So in that time frame, the medicine stabilized me. I was considered recovered by medical standards, and I got a job as a peer support specialist. Started helping people with mental health issues, try and navigate their mental health journey with lived experience versus book experience. Um, One of the things that really stood out to me was developing this relationship with God, and that had never been anything that had been introduced to me before. As life stabilized, we had our second child. Her name is Aspen, and we decided I needed to get a better job to support a growing family, not for anything more than pay. And around that time, we also moved in to help take care of my grandfather, who had macular degeneration, couldn't see, to take care of his property and his house. And so we moved in to help take care of him. And I became someone who, instead of having and being an empty cup, was being filled up so much that I could give. And that was very different for much of my life. Um, but I started trusting God more, and He started giving me more and more to be able to give to other people. Right after my daughter was born, my second daughter, I started noticing I was having difficulty hearing, and I had to get my first set of hearing aids in 2022. With people wearing the mask during COVID time, it was really hard to understand people, and I didn't realize I was lip reading. I don't know how long I'd actually had some hearing loss. About 6 months later, I had to get another set because the set that I had was not strong enough for me to be able to understand people. And navigating a loss of a sense through faith is really different than just not navigating it at all. Like, I started trusting God and those around me to meet me where I was at. My family started learning sign language in the event that I eventually would go deaf. Um, I started trusting not only God, but other people to meet me where I'm at. People would repeat themselves, but not angrily for me. I wasn't masking anymore. I was being open and honest with my feelings. And life was really starting to become a healthy space for me. I was using good healthy coping skills. I was having a good support system. And that following Easter, we decided to go down and visit my brother in Florida. And we had what our family calls the great debate, because they encouraged me to get baptized if I truly felt the way I did. And I said, why should I get baptized? I'm a terrible sinner. I've tried to throw my life away several times. And they said, God meets you where you're at. God accepts you as who you are, and God loves you for who you are. And we went back and forth on this several times, but eventually, over the weekend that we were down there, I decided when I came back home I was going to get baptized as a declaration of faith, if anything. And I had at that time the strongest hearing aids on the market, but they're not waterproof. So whenever I got baptized, I had to take them off, and I was baptized essentially deaf. And it was just me and God in silence when I got baptized. I was dunked under the water. I'm almost certain what the pastor said over me was a prayer, but I would have no idea. And it was a peaceful, comforting silence. And silence usually, aside from whenever I was going through my mental health stuff with my wife, was terrifying because I was going deaf. Shortly after that, I got connected with an ENT that got me the set up for a cochlear implant. But that process takes about 9 months. So there was 3 different doctors that I had to meet with, a mental health evaluation because of what I had gone through, and I had to get direct surgeon approval, not only for my mental health reasons, but I'm a big guy. They had to make sure I was going to be able to be on the table. So I got the first cochlear implant. There was a lot of vertigo, dizziness, nausea, but I could hear again. And I actually got to hear Aspen's voice for the first time after I got the cochlear implant. So up until about that time, I had no idea what she sounded like, other than when she screamed and it just like made the hearing aids reverberate. And that's when life started to get reimagined for me. I decided to go back to school for ministry. I got an associate's in ministry. At Gettysburg Foursquare, we've developed a room upstairs called Quiet Church for people with hearing or sensory issues that they can go to and experience fellowship with each other and connection with other believers and not have to either be overwhelmed down in the big room or have to watch it at home online. I started growing in my faith with myself and others. And I found that my purpose with surviving and my hearing loss and future was more faith rooted and retrospectively looking at why God and why I went through those things and how I can use those things to help each other and further the kingdom. Um, this past November, we bought a house, which was one of my only two life goals was to buy a house when I was really little and to start a business. So buying a house was amazing. And then a week after moving in, I woke up with extreme arm pain. My arms felt like they were asleep. The pain scale was about a 10 out of 10, and I was raised a farm boy, so if it's a 10 out of 10 for a farm boy, it hurt. I actually lost complete functionality of my arms for the better part of 5 days. I had what was called Parsonage-Turner syndrome. The active pain phase is supposed to last 2 weeks, and then the recovery time is anywhere from 6 months to 2 years. We were gifted with meal trains and stuff to help me while I was off work, and this really helped me lean in on not only the power of prayer for myself, but from other people, and to learn to rely on the fellowship around me and to trust that God will provide. Because of the power of prayer, my active phase was, instead of being 2 weeks, was 9 days, and I was fully recovered in 3 weeks instead of 6 months to a year. And I can attribute that to nothing short of the power of prayer. And God is with us. God provisions for us, and God provides. Valleys aren't so scary when He walks with us and sends others to walk with us, beside us, through that hard stuff. And that reminds me of another verse in the Bible. It's 2 Corinthians 9:8. And God will generously provide all you need, and then you will always have everything you need and plenty left over to share with others. So, about 2 weeks after the Parsonage-Turner syndrome symptoms resolved, I had an evaluation for my second cochlear implant, and that was on a Tuesday. And the surgeon has a 6 to 9 month wait list from the time he says, yes, you can get the surgery, to your actual surgery date. And while we were there, he said, when do you want to have your surgery? I'm like, well, as soon as possible. If you can't do it next week, I have to wait till next year, because at the time was my work schedule. And he said, how does next Tuesday sound? I said, that sounds great. And I got my second cochlear implant. 2 months later, a month after wearing it, because they make you wait a month of healing, I'm already in the 90th percentile of being able to hear again, which is incredible, because most people, they want around 20%. And now my life is still working through some health issues. A lot of surgeries, that Parsonage-Turner stuff. I was on steroids for a while. It really dampened my immune system. However, I trust God for whatever reason and purpose that I go through everything. And because of that, I got laid off from work, but I have no fear about what's to come next. I trust God. And what He has put me through and what I've gone through is all for a reason, and it's all for His divine purposes. And just because I don't understand them now doesn't mean I won't see the fruits of those valleys come to fruition. So if there was anything that I could leave you with, it's that structured religion is kind of hard or easy to shake, but your faith in God is something you can hold on to. Life is hard because life is hard. And then the last thing is that God is with us, God provides, and God gives us provisions. So, thank you.